Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and this week we're on episode 15 of March Comes In Like a Lion, and yeah, last week did not go as planned. Did not go as planned at all. Ray did not beat Shimada in the match, and so it's going to be Shimada versus Gotou. Now, the silver lining, of course, is that Ray is potentially going to be invited to go to a workshop with Shimada and Nikaido, which sounds like a dream. It sounds like everything I want. I want it so bad. But Shimada's like, no, we have to, he has to come to us. We can't make him do this. He has to come to us, and then we'll go from there. So it's like, oh. So we have that promise potentially hanging in the wings, but it's gonna be Shimada versus Gotou, and I don't honestly know how it's gonna end up. I want to think that Gotou is going to win, but I don't know. Shimada really wants to play, Sayo, whatever his name is. He's the white-haired one that kind of looks like Ray. He wants to play him, his teacher, and so I don't know if he's going to have the same problem that Ray had, where he kind of gets too caught up in the future and doesn't think in the moment. I said that last week, but then I thought about it, and I thought, well, or maybe he's going to tell Ray he's going to beat Gotou, and then when Ray's like, what were you thinking? He's going to be like, I'm kind of thinking what you were thinking, but here's what I did to win, whereas here's what you did and it caused you to lose. So it might end up being a teachable moment. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go, but I've got a couple comments before we start this episode. First of all, I Hate Piano, back in episode 13, talked about how the Smith eating breakfast scene, there's been a couple people talk about this, but I Hate Piano had a Patreon comment on it, is actually, they sent the link, and if you watch it, it's in the Patreon comment for episode 13. It is like a beat-for-beat reference to a 1970s detective drama called Kizudarakai no Tenshi, or Wounded Angel. Now, why Shaft and the creators decided to make that scene a beat-for-beat recreation of a 1970s detective drama, I don't know. That just seems like it's just like Shaft Studios, like, we're doing weird stuff, let's just find this random thing and go with it. Because they shared in the Discord the manga panel, and it is interesting that they got 2 minutes out of just literally a page of manga, but the manga page doesn't really show all of the details that they show in this side-by-side comparison. So I don't know. The art director of that episode was like, let's fill some time, let's do something goofy. It was very humorous. I appreciated it, but couldn't know. So thank you, I Hate Piano. And then Trixie Cell 4511, as well as G the Wolf 7948, did clarify that Kyouko is 5 years older than Ray. So she is 22 right now, and he's 17. So, what does that do with my thoughts about her character? Well, what it does is it does clarify a few things. I don't think it makes me feel better about her character. It almost makes me feel worse in a way, because I'm like, oh girl, you're a young adult. You're 22 years old. Why are you acting this way? Why are you acting a fool when you're 22? Like, if she'd been 16, I'd have been like, oh, she's a 16-year-old girl. She don't know any better. But I'm like, you're 22. You're a near grown-ass woman. You don't need to be treating people like this. So that does not make me view her any better in that regard of how she treats Ray. Also, her being 22 and him being 17, and I don't know if he's a minor in Japanese culture, but that adds another layer of, you need to back the hell off to me about her character. So I'm like, I don't like that a bit. But also, in terms of Gotou, it doesn't make the situation with Gotou any better. I'm sorry. I know some people in the comments will probably be like, well, she's 22, and even if he's 40, she's an adult woman. That is true. That makes it maybe a smidgen better than her being a minor. However, he's a married man. He does not need to be having an affair with a woman half his wife's age or half his age and be cheating on his wife. Gotou is still a sleazeball. I don't like him at all. And Kyouko, she should know better. So it doesn't basically help at all. It just mainly justifies my feelings towards her. I'm like, oh, in the words of Alyssa Edwards, you were that woman I thought you were. But whatever. Maybe they're made for each other. No, I actually do feel a little bit bad for Kyouko, because even though she's 22 and should know better, when I was 22, I wasn't making those stupid decisions. I do think that it does suck that she clearly likes him and he knows that she likes him, and he's letting it go on. That is something that is his fault, and he needs to be an adult and take care of it. And maybe we'll see it happen. Maybe we'll see them interact, and we'll be able to judge for ourselves what that's going to be like. I feel like it's going to happen eventually, right? Because we keep on skirting around it, so who knows? But in any case, I'm really excited to dive into this episode, and I hope you all are as well, but we're not going to waste any more time. I want to give a very quick shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank them for their support. I want to thank all patrons and everybody on YouTube that subscribed. Thank you so much for supporting me and my reactions. But the philanthropy tier on Patreon, they get a special shout out each week in several of my videos, so I want to give them a shout out as well. So I want to thank Alex Cornejo, Anime Annie, Be Happy, Bryant Reed, Dana, Destiny Marie, Danger Zone, Davarin, Danny Donmai, Ichu, Eric, Kiri, El Freya, Lyndon, Kiri, as well as Matthew Palfinier, Murphy, Nameless Monster, Nicholas, as well as Ghostly Turnip, Faisho, as well as Sunspots, Trails, Translucent Men, and Shimoyama. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited, not gonna lie, but we're gonna see exactly what happens this episode. I'm curious if they're gonna show us the actual match between Gotou and Shimada, or if they're gonna montage it, or if they're gonna gloss over it, or if we're gonna immediately cut to the future and then they're just gonna tell us. I don't know how they're gonna present it. I don't know how it's going to be shown to us as the viewer, so I'm really excited about that. But with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to start episode 15 of March Comes In Like a Lion, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Whew, well, Whiteboard and I are like, we've taken like the tower of emotional terror up and down through this episode. This show doesn't miss. This show is just so good. It's just amazing. And I don't have anything bad to say about it. It's always, every episode is so good, and it just gets better and better and draws you deeper and deeper. And damn, it makes you really care about characters, and then it makes you loathe characters, and it's just like, ugh. And it's kind of like, it's such a good representation of real life, because there are people that you probably know in real life that they are messed up, and you're like, man, that person's messed up, and I empathize with their plights. I feel like they should use some therapy, but I don't want to be anywhere near them. And so that is a lot of the case with these characters. Oh my god. Kyouko and Gotou. Can it get more toxic? I don't think it can. I don't think it can get more toxic than them. I thought Given was toxic with some of their relationships. No, they don't have a candle to Gotou and Kyouko. They're like the most toxic people that I think I've seen portrayed on screen in quite some time. And here's the thing, before I go into my tirade about their atrocities, before I go into my tirade against them, I know the people in the comments are going to be like, but Kyouko has abandonment issues and daddy issues. And I'm like, yeah, her dad's not perfect. Her dad does a lot of bad things. And he's kind of on my shit list too, in a way. But I feel like there's a lot of grown-ups in the room that ain't grown up in, and they need to get their ass in gear and start being adults and just go to damn therapy. That's the thing. It's like, how many times do we watch like a medieval fantasy show or something like Attack on Titan or a dystopian future or some kind of like dystopian world where the characters are all messed up and they're all emotionally traumatized, and you're like, well, damn, if only they could go to therapy, but you know, it's the apocalypse. There's no therapists left in business right now. And you're like, well, that's all justified because they can't go to therapy because they're in the apocalypse. What can we do? Here, there are therapists. And I really wish the show would be like, Kyouko, you need to sit down and go sit on a couch, have somebody take some notes and work you through some therapy, girl, because you need it. And Gotou, you need to act like a damn man. I'm just sorry, he's not. And I know the comments are going to be like, well, but you have to understand their circumstance. And I'm like, I do understand their circumstance. That still doesn't make them good people. And it doesn't mean that they're without criticism. So buckle in. my part of my certification and my degrees in conflict resolution, and I'm like, I want to be a mediator for them and sit down and work them through this bullshit and then be like, now get out. Let's talk about this episode. I think that this episode is really smart to call the first half Moonlight. The first half being called Moonlight is so on the nose because not only does it start out with the scene of Ray having his space violated by Kyouko, but it ends with her and Gotou walking off together. I have thoughts about this whole first half of it. The second half of it being called Lump of Ego. I didn't expect the second half to be about Nikaido saying he was the lump of ego. I thought it would be more about Shimada or Ray or somebody else, but Nikaido admitting it is, I just love Nikaido and Shimada. They're just such good people. They're just literally the like really kind-hearted, compassionate, good people that work through, they communicate, they have the best things in mind. They're just nice, innocent, harmless people. And they're my people. Like, I would hang out with Nikaido and Shimada in a heartbeat. But Gotou, it's like toxic masculinity. It's just like everything wrong with like everything that's like stereotypically toxic that people bitch about with men. Gotou is like a representative of it. And he like hides it with this sleazy machismo. And it's just like, ugh. I just want to throw up whenever I'm around him. So my one fear with this show, is that they are going to try to establish, and I'm going to be like, I'm getting like vomit and bile in my mouth as I say this. My one fear is that this show is going to try, Huckleberry, be nice. My one fear is that this show is going to try to say that like Ray's first crush was Kyouko and like his first love was her and that he cares about her. And I'm like, show, are you going to go that route? Because that's so like Stockholm syndrome is what that is. That really is. It's like Stockholm syndrome. It's like she emotionally manipulates him to staying with her, and she like mentally abuses him nearly because she's just she projects all of her insecurities onto him and makes it feel like it's his problem, and she guilt trips him, and she just like has all this toxicity eluding out of him, and she's 5 years older than him. She's 22. Girl, grow up. Like, just I cannot imagine being her age and trying to emotionally manipulate this person that she doesn't claim that she likes, but it's just her own self-loathing she's projecting onto him. I'm like, I have watched enough episodes of Drag Race. They would have already drug her through the mud and had her do a testimonial. They would have gave her a hug, worked her through some therapy, and been like, okay, girl, now get your ass in gear and step it up. And she's just not doing it. And it's like, ugh. And there is a part of me that likes her character as being like interestingly writing wise, but she's starting to feel a little one note. Like, she's starting to feel a little bit like, oh, she's clingy to him. It's starting to feel like this is all she is, are her issues. And I'm like, but I want her to work through them. And I want her to find a way to work through them. But I don't want Ray to have to be her miracle worker. You know, I don't want Ray to have to be her social worker and be her, like, manic pixie dream boy to help her get through her problems. I want her to go off and get her problems solved on her own. Here's what Kyouko needs to do. Is Kyouko, her whole thing is that she has abandonment and daddy issues. Scotty from Austin Powers, daddy doesn't love me. And so that's her whole thing. And she is self-loathing. I love the description of her. The description of she's self-loathing and thinks low of herself, which Ray thinks is quite silly because she's very privileged. That's the thing. She has like a self-sufficient home. She ain't out on the streets. She has a good, decent, like, her family has money. She's not wanting for food or shelter, right? She ain't homeless. So she has a self-sufficient home. She is a very attractive looking person. She has like ambition in her personality, so it seems, and it's just like her whole thing is because her dad doesn't seem to love her as much as Ray. She's jealous of Ray, But she also clings to Ray because he's a nice person, because he's nice and selfless. And it just like all of him. I'm reading Berserk the same time I'm watching this show, and Kyoko's character in a lot of ways reminds me of a character named Nina in that series. The only exception is Nina, to me, comes across as empathetic because Nina acknowledges all of these things about herself. Nina in that series, without spoiling much, Nina's character comes across kind of like Kyoko's, where you're like, oh damn, you're flawed, girl, and you got a lot of problems and like issues. But Nina in that series, she acknowledges them. She acknowledges she's a coward. She acknowledges that she's not good. She knows that she's self-loathing. She acknowledges all of her flaws. And she doesn't necessarily pin blame on anyone. She's just like, yeah, I suck. And she's like, and I don't know what to do about it. And what makes her character endearing is that you kind of go along with her and she becomes more relatable because it's like, oh yeah, we all have those flaws. We all have some form of issue in our life, whether it's with parents, whether it's with guardians, whether it's with a partner, whether it's us feeling inadequate, whether we don't feel we're loved as much as a sibling. Like, we all have issues in our lives, and you become an adult and you work through them. And working through them, whether it's through therapy or through friendship or through talking and communication, you find a way to make it work. But the first step of that is, if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else? And so, the first step is self-acknowledgement and awareness. And the thing of it is I think that Kyoko is aware of her flaws, but she won't just come out and let it out and verbalize it. Instead, she puts up a barrier, she puts up a wall, she projects her insecurities onto other people, she blames, she scapegoats, and it's just unattractive. And it's just, at some point, you're kind of like, I want you to just go away. Fix yourself. Physician, heal thyself. And then come back when you've got that all taken care of. But I really don't like her, coming in there and just intruding into Ray's space. And if she had just gotten into bed with him, that would have been enough. If she had gotten in bed and said, don't touch me, because what it seemed like to me was that she had come from a night out with Gotou. We don't know what Gotou did to her, and I feel bad if he did anything to her, because that's not right. And I will talk about Gotou when we get to him. We'll talk about him. But I feel like that's not right. And I feel for her in that moment, because I'm like, yeah, that would suck. And if she had just got in bed beside him and said, don't touch me, because we know Ray's not going to, that would have been enough. But then she has to invade his space and push her burden onto him, knowing he's a fragile person in that sense, knowing that he's going to take on that burden, knowing that it's going to make him feel awful. She still does that to him. And this isn't something that happened 6 years ago. This is recent. So I'm like, girl, you need to grow up. And it's time. You're 22. If you're 16, I've been like, you're still a kid, but you're a young adult. You need to grow up. And you need to quit involving Ray, because Ray has a really big heart and he takes it to heart and takes it personally. And so he describes Kyoko like a glass with cracks in it, that she's never satisfied. Yeah. And she has a family. She's blessed with good looks. And she possesses the power to control people around her. I mean, she is first world problems, hashtag. Hashtag privilege, right? And she's manipulative. I'm like, I understand Kyoko to an extent. And there's a part of me that wants to empathize with her. But then there's another part of me that doesn't feel sorry for her. Because I'm like, girl, you know how you are. You just don't want to fix yourself. You keep running away from your problems. And it's just starting to get annoying. And I'm like, you need to go do something about this. And the worst part is that, this loneliness in her heart, the one who put those cracks in her glass, in her mind, it's her dad. But then Ray also blames himself. And I'm like, you know what? You can't be an adult in the world and keep blaming everyone else for your problems. Eventually, you're going to have to do something about it. And dragging everyone down with you is really annoying and really dumb. And I can't stand her character. She's just one of those people I would be like, you need to get therapy, grow up, let's move on. And then I just would not be around her. She would annoy me far too much. I guess she's just immature, you know? And Goto's immature as well. And so they're kind of made for each other in that sense, but it's like the most toxic and worst thing. And then she's like those 90 girls from like Reality Bites and like those 90 movies where she's like, I'm leaving home because my life is so horrible. I'm like, yeah, your dad is not great. He, you know what? He is awful in the sense that he doesn't acknowledge you like he should acknowledge you. That is bad. But I'm like, he doesn't physically abuse you. He's not really verbally abusing you. He's neglecting you, which is a problem. But I'm like, girl, you ain't got it that bad. You got it a lot better than a lot of people. And she's just like, I'm leaving home. And I'm like, oh, bless you. Every girl in their teenage years has thought about leaving home, myself included. But at the end of the day, looking back, I'm like, that was when I was like 15 and didn't know any better. And, you know, by the time I was 22, I was like, wow, that was a really dumb thing to do. And she's 22. So it's like, come on now. But Ray brings up a good point. He's like, Gotou is not a good guy. He has a wife. I keep going back to that. I'm like, Goto's married. Like, if I was his wife and I was like in the hospital sick, I would be so pissed, you know? And then here's the thing. Kyouko knows that he has a wife. And she's like, well, she's been in the hospital forever. I'm like, bitch, are you for real? If the shoe had been on the other foot, do you know how shattered Kyoko's world would be if she was the wife in the hospital and found out that her husband was cheating on her with a younger woman? Do you know how fragile little Kyoko's heart would have shattered if that had been her on the other shoe? But here she's like, well, she's been in the hospital forever. It's her problem. I'm like, bitch, she can walk the walk, but she can talk the talk, but she can't walk the walk. That's the thing. And, oh, she pisses me off so much. I'm just like, you're so immature. And then Ray is like, well, your dad won't forgive you. And she's like, so what? I don't care about him. I don't care if he forgives me. I don't forgive him. She's a child. And girl, grow up. I'm so over her in this series. I know everybody at the beginning was like, she's so interesting and well written, but she's just so one note at this point that she's just like daddy issues, abandonment. He berated me in middle school because I wasn't good at shogi and told me to give up. I'm like, girl, I've watched too many anime where people had legit problems and you are just like, girl, get over it. Like either get good at shogi, keep playing, and show your dad you actually care about it because you want to get his affection, or just give up and move on with your life. But she's just in this weird limbo where she's just like, boo-hoo, daddy doesn't love me. And I'm like, well, then do something about it. Quit just sitting there putting your problems on everybody else. And I guess I get so pissed off about it because Ray takes it so to heart. Like, Ray thinks it's all his fault. And she's crying and just being like, well, I'm a loser. And Ray's taking it so hard. And I'm like, girl, you have so many opportunities around you. She has money. She has family. She has like a house. She could get a job. She could go buy a shogi set of her own. What? Do something about it. If you don't care about shogi, then what? And then she has the audacity to be like, well, she's like, why am I this pathetic? And Ray's just like, oh, I don't know. And that's when he says that he'll leave so that she doesn't have to leave. And you know what? And then she's like, oh, don't. And she has the audacity to be like, oh, don't leave me. And I'm like, well, you just said you were leaving. It's like some middle school shenanigans, y'all. And I'm 36. And I'm like, girl, you have means around you. Do something about it, girl. Come on now. I guess I wouldn't loathe her character so much if it didn't have such an impact on Ray. And Ray is a character that I want to root for, and I want to see him get better. And so I just want to go off on Kyouko because she's not helping the situation at all. And she's just dead weight. And I'm like, girl, you are just useless at this point. Go do something. And I can't stand people that just sit there and wallow in their own misery when they have the opportunity to better themselves and they just won't take it because woe is me. And I'm like, well, woe is a lot of people, but a lot of people find a way to get out of it. So go do something. The passive aggressive bullshit where people are just, if you don't have the means to get yourself better or get yourself help, that's one thing. Like if she was homeless or if she didn't have money or if she didn't have resources, I would get that. And I'd be like, damn, that sucks. But she's like so privileged and she has so much at her fingertips and she's just like going out at night and having an affair with this older man and flaunting it in Ray's face that I'm like, I don't feel sorry for you. I'm just like, oh, get out. Just ranted for 10 minutes about her. I hate her character. I can't stand her. I'm like, if she doesn't have any character growth and this is just going to be her throughout the whole series, over it. I'm like, get out. Bitch, leave. So, anyway, I feel for Ray, who is stuck at school and can't go see the match. I didn't realize that in this match there would be 3 matches to determine who would advance to face Soya, who is apparently the title match. So basically, it's best 2 out of 3, and they've won each now. So I don't know. I don't know if Shimada's going to win. Because I feel like it took all Shimada had in him to play for 11 hours is insane. 11 hours of playtime is insane. That's just so mind-blowing to me. But I'd be so exhausted. Right? And they made it so dramatic. We'll talk about the match when we get to it, but I don't know. Shimada like gave it his all, and after 11 hours, he barely beat Gotou. So I don't know. I fear that he's going to lose the next round. I'm rooting for him. I want Shimada to win because I want Shimada to face Soya, but I feel like maybe he's going to lose, and then that's going to get Ray to talk with him, and that's going to get him to go to the workshop. Is going to be him being like, well, I've got to keep practicing so I can face Soya, and then that's going to get Ray kind of involved with it, right? That's what I think so. I really like how Ray describes Shimada is this forest, and it just slowly encircles you and cuts you off. I really like that description. I like that you have Ray and Gotou and Kyouko are often described as these storms and tempests. And then you have Shimada, who's like a forest, right? And then I don't know how Nikaido would be. Would we describe Nikaido as like the sun melting, maybe? Melting you underneath his blaze? I don't know. So I do feel for Ray because he's got all these absent notices. And the teacher miscalculates, which I'm an English teacher, so I would have done the same. I would have been like, no. And I love that the teacher miscalculates, and he's like, but he's like, I thought I had it right, but no, you've got to make up all your exams and everything. Poor Ray. I feel for him. At least he did it now and didn't wait. It's not a sports anime until the protagonist does something bad at school. I think of Haikyuu, where there was one episode of Haikyuu where they got bad grades and they had to stick behind and do like makeup tests. And I feel like every sports anime either has an episode where the main characters have to make up the test because they're so focused on their sports, they're neglecting in their school activities, or there's a threat, or they're like, oh, if we don't pass the test, we can't go to the tournament, or something like that. I feel like every sports anime has that. So the fact that now March comes in like a lion has it, makes it fall into the true sports anime category. We've made it. We've done it. Yes, indeed. I also like the idea that these websites like allow you to keep track of the matches online. Like you can actually watch the scoreboard and see like what moves they played and what they've done there. I'm like, then you get to like keep up, and they have like their little professional like portraits there and their profile pictures. Like that's freaking cool. I mean, I get what he's talking about there being a lag and him being like, you know, the match is actually in real time going a lot faster and this is just a live blog. But I love the idea of them described as heavy bones colliding with one another. It's so good. A slugfest. I love that this game where it's literally just chess and they're just playing so quietly. And yet it has that piano music adds so much to this show. That piano music like gets your blood pressure skyrocketing. Like it's just so intense and I love it. Oh, I just, And I like the teacher feels sorry for Ray. And he knows this matters a lot to Ray. And he's like, you should just go ahead and go to the shogi hall. And then he immediately regrets it later when he realizes that he shouldn't have let him go. And he's like, am I bad at my job? But I feel for the teacher because I would be the same way. I'd be like, oh, just go. So I thought that the match, I didn't realize Nikaido has the tiniest little feet. His little feet, they're so small. And then you have Smith and you have Issa watching as well, and they're all watching on the little television set. I feel like this entire scene, I don't know when this manga was created. It feels like the late 90s, early 2000s. I know someone's told me before, but this whole scene here feels like the 90s, like the TV plugged in and they have like the station watching. I love that they're all gathered there. I love the idea of Issa and Smith and Nikaido and them just gathering around watching the title match in another room on the TV. That's so freaking cool. I didn't know they could do that. I love it. I love that he gets there to watch how the match is going. And he's like, what is he doing? I guess they all know that Shimada is somehow Nikaido's half-brother or brother in title, or however they want to say it. I guess they all understand that because they don't question it. But interesting. And then I guess the camera overhead is what's showing the match. Interesting. But they're so calm and collected. Although, in this first match, the one that Shimada loses, there were little things that kind of would let you notice, even if you weren't able to follow along with the shogi match, that he was losing. You could kind of, they did a lot of close-ups on the bottles that he had, kind of like what they did with Ray in the match against Shimada, like the close-up on the bottles, like he's thirsty, he's getting nervous. And then at one point, he's sitting there like this, and he's holding his arm, and just the body language, whenever you're like this, your body language is a sign that you're closed off and that you're not feeling it, and you're wanting to like get, inside yourself. So Shimada, like kind of like this, is showing that he's getting a little more tense. Whereas Gotou, the entire time he's facing him in the first match, looks very calm, and his body language, he's just like, yeah, whatever. And just, even though they're very intense, it's much more at ease. Right? And we don't even get to see if Godou's even drinking anything. We don't even get to see that. And then just the two of them next to each other. And it was a battle between two people who have faith in themselves. I like how Ray describes that moment. He's like, watching them play is like watching two people who are confident in their own abilities. They're not questioning. They're not nervous. They're just going head to head and being like, yes, we know exactly who we are as players, as people. Let's go head to head and see who wins. And I feel like Ray is not used to that, because all the people that Ray has faced prior to Shimada have usually been like the nervous or desperate types. And so seeing like two confident people play off in the finals, I think it's something he's not as used to. But 153 moves later, 8th Dan concedes defeat to the 9th Dan Gotou. So they are a little bit different. They're one rank off. The first of 3 games determined. So then Kyouko shows up. I do love that Kyouko has the white jacket and Ray has the black jacket. And of course, she's out there waiting on Gotou, right? And the gloomy shrine. And then Gotou comes out of the shadows. Here's my thing. I can't forgive Gotou. I'm sorry. If anybody's like, but his wife's in the hospital, I'm like, then divorce her. Then divorce her. If she doesn't matter to you, then divorce her. But that's the thing. He's a coward. He wouldn't do that because it would probably make him lose face to put down that he divorced his wife in pursuit of a girl half his age. So he is slime. I can't stand Gotou. It's like, you're too cowardly to divorce your wife. You're too cowardly to admit you're having a relationship with a woman that's half your age. And and you called her a stalker. You like said that in front of her and to Ray. I'm like, he's the worst. Ugh. I don't like Kyouko at all. And I cannot stand Gotou either. I'm like, they're both horrifically toxic for each other. And he needs to grow up. She needs to grow up. And I'm not going to change my opinion about them right now. That's the thing. I know, here's my thing about characters, and y'all are going to have to bear with me and be patient. I'm like, if I don't like a character, the best thing y'all can do is just let me go. It's cool if you plead your case. If you like their characters, go for it. But my only concession is, please don't try to be like, well, you have to understand, or please remember, or no, that ain't going to work. That's just going to make me hate them more. So, and maybe Gotou will get, here's my thing. If Kota found out that Gotou was hitting on his daughter and having an affair with her, I feel like Kota would go punch his lights out. Kodo would go smack the shit out of him, I feel like. And now Shimada has seen her with Gotou and is like, what the hell? And Shimada doesn't seem to know who she is. So he probably thinks, oh, damn, Godou's with this young woman having an affair with his wife? What the heck's up with this? I swear, if she shows up with Koda and Shimada sees them together and is going to be like, And poor Nikaido is so innocent. He doesn't even understand what's going on. He's like, are they having an argument? And Shimada's like, no. Because it's like, the thing that's so disgusting is like, we don't know, is she having sex with him? Is she just there because he's lonely? And I'm like, go to the hospital and see your damn wife. I'm like, But he ain't going to divorce her because that'll make him look like an asshole, divorcing his wife in the hospital. But he's just such a coward. And like Shimada says, he's not mature. Blech. Blech. I want Shimada or Rei to beat them so bad and put them in their place, but ugh. The thing about me is I want Rei to get away from her. And I feel like Rei does a moment here where I love the moonlight reflecting out of his glasses there. And I feel like Rei he's come a little bit because he wasn't provoked by Gotou. And Gotou provokes him. I'm like, dude, you're like 40 something. This kid's 17. You got to pick on little kids now? Is that how you get your ego stoked? I'm like, And then when he doesn't win against Shimada, he gets all huffy and he doesn't even want to see Kyouko and he just leaves her. The worst. They're the worst. They're literally Mona Lisa Saperstein and Jean Ralphio is literally them, except those two characters in Parks and Recreation are hilarious. Neither of them are hilarious. So I'm like, That's the one thing. I'm like, whenever Rei like watches her leave and she's like, are you really leaving? And she tries to like go after him. And for a second, I'm like, it almost seems like Rei feels as if because he left her, now she's going after Gotou because of her abandonment issues. And I'm like, no, Rei, do not blame yourself for her being with this loser. Do not blame yourself because she can't go to therapy. Do not blame yourself because she can't grow up. I'm like, it just pisses me off that it seems like his character feels responsible for her problems. And I'm like, you're not, Rei, at all. And I wish he would realize that. I wish someone would tell him he's not responsible for her. And then when he watches her walk away with him, he's like, I was in a hurry to become an adult. And I thought if I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. And then he like pats her head. And I'm like, it breaks my heart because he's such a nice person. He's like, then there's no way I could protect the people I care about. And I'm like, dude, do not be, I think it's fine. She's his sister, his foster sister. I think it's fine if he wants to protect her. But if he gets in her, I know I was rooting for it at the beginning of this series because I didn't know the situation like I do now. If he ends up in a romantic relationship with her and it's like Stockholm Syndrome I will be so pissed and I will like hate this show if that's the route it goes. Because that's so dumb. Don't do that. Like, it's one thing to want to like protect your sister. I get that. But I'm like, I feel like he's Stockholm Syndromed into it. And it just, the whole situation pisses me off. She pisses me off. And I wish Rei could just let her go. But anyway, thank God we go back to poor Shimada and Nikaido. And I love that they talk about like, he's like, I tried to take the initiative with the one turn. And he fought back right away and was cheerful about it. I love Shimada. And how he's like, I'll get him next time. He's not very mature. I love his like game face where he's like, I'm going to get him. And Nikaido's like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, Nikaido's so happy for his big brother. He's so excited. I swear, if Nikaido and Shimada weren't in this episode, I would have been a much grumpier person. There's just something about Kyouko and Gotou that makes me so pissed off. I'm like, get off the screen. We don't need you. Leave. And I know some people are like, the drama. And I'm like, ugh, grow up. I hate them. I just want them to just leave. So then we talk to Akari and Hina and their grandpa. And the grandpa's kind of like, this is just a man's battle. And he's going to have to like, just nothing you can do. Just leave him alone with his thoughts. It's a bit antiquated, a little bit I'm like, they should be able to go talk to Ray. I think so. He's like, just leave him alone with his feelings. And I kind of disagree with that because I'm like, Ray needs to talk to people. That's the whole therapy. Ray needs to talk to people and communicate with them. I don't like this kind of outdated, old-fashioned idea. It's especially popular among, I know in Western cultures, it's a very machismo idea of like, just the men don't cry, just leave us alone with our feelings. And I'm like, no, you need to go to therapy and talk to people. So I think the grandpa's ideas are a little outdated. I'm like, I get what he's trying to say. My grandpa and dad would say the exact same thing. But I also get that Hina's like, I just wish there was something we could do for him. And I disagree. I think they should do stuff for him and talk to him. I do agree with the grandpa, though, that even if they talk to him and communicate, that sometimes you do have to fail to get better. I like the idea he talks about where he says that failure means that you challenged something. Failure means that you took a risk. It didn't pay off, but at least you took the risk. You didn't just stand by in life doing nothing and laughing at those, what's that song by Garth Brooks? Life isn't tried, it's merely survived. If you stand outside the fire, that's literally what the grandpa's insinuating. I feel like they should talk to Ray, especially knowing how much Ray is sunk into depression half the time. They should talk to him, but I do feel like he does need to take risks and he is going to fail. Everybody's been humiliated at least once in their life. And you learn from it, you move forward, you get better, and you move on. That's what you need to do. And I feel for Hina because she genuinely seems to care about him. And Akari's like, he must have really wanted to beat that player. I feel like I love how Hina, she's worried about him and hoping that he's okay. And then we cut from her asking like, what should we do? And she has like her knees pressed in together. And then we cut to Ray, who's doing the exact same thing. I think someone, maybe it was Sarah S, said that they shipped Hina and Ray. I see it. I see the Ray and Akari ship, and I see the Hina and Ray ship as well. Those are what we call healthy relationships. The Kyouko and Ray ship, I was so wrong. That's toxic. We don't need that in our lives. No. But yeah. I made good. All he can do is his best. He'll realize it when he becomes an adult. That out of all people who put themselves out there, every single one has been humiliated. And I feel like Ray is getting to that point. And that's why I wonder if Shimada is going to lose the final match. And that lesson the grandpa is talking about is something that Shimada is going to also tell Ray about, and Ray's going to get that confirmed through Shimada's loss to Gotou. And it would kind of be a lesson, that sometimes the sleazy people win. It's not always that the knight in shining armor wins. Sometimes the people that are assholes like Gotou, they do win, and it sucks. But that happens sometimes. It's like, Because he like goes up to Shimada and he says, oh, you look older than me. And Shimada's like, really? Well, you got to hit up the gym because you're such a narcissist? I'm like, shit. And then, like, the fire bolts between them. I love that blue and red shot of them against each other. It feels very Trigun, very Naitao when we see the two of them there. Yes. I don't know who the guy is. He's the guy that faced Smith, that Smith was kind of hitting on. But Issa and Nikaido and that one guy who kind of looks like Ganoza from Psycho-Pass. They're all watching. It's so funny. They're like, if we get to like rank A, are we going to be as cool as them? And then Smith comes in and he's like, no. Smith is like, you all are losers. It's great. But anyway, so they all go in there to watch, and poor Ray, he can't go watch the match because he's missed too much school. And he's like, I wonder, how they're going to play this next round. Bless his heart. I also love the idea that the teacher who realizes he messed up and realized that Ray's missed too many matches, I love that he went out of his way to get him a study guide put together and was like, here you go, this will help you pass all your extra tests you're probably going to have to take. Oh my God. And he stayed overtime to help him take the extra homework. Like, he's so good. I feel for Ray, though. The concept of missing all this school and missing those tests. I remember when I did a speech competitively in college, we'd have to miss some days, and makeup tests and makeup stuff was the worst. I hated it. I was like, oh. Especially I'm somebody that I'm like I'm a visual and audio learner, so I need to see the person explain it, and I also need to see them write it out. And so if I miss class and I can't see them do that, I'm like I don't know it as well, right? So in any case, meanwhile, the two of them are just battling it out and just going all out and just like smacking down the pieces. And I feel like in this case, it worked to Shimada's advantage. She was so hyped up and like just in the moment, they didn't have time to process if Gotou made a move. And I feel like it worked against Gotou this time, that he got too worked up and he let Shimada slip past him. So now going into this third match, I don't know how it's going to end up. I don't know how it's going to end up between them as far as the results of it. But the fact that it went on for 11 hours is insane to me. And I love that they just like keep watching. And I love Nikaido and his like hair like just bobbling here and there. And they're like, now we're at the point of the kings being left. I love it. I love how they get into it. And Shimada manages to corner him. I love that you can kind of see Godou's resolve crumbling, and you can see Shimada look a little bit more and more, like a little bit more and more confident about his moves, and then the lightning striking and everything. And then you can see Gotou being like, and poor Shimada, he like stumbles out, and he's like, I won after 11 hours. I did it. And he's like sweaty and his hair is like all damp on him. And he's just like, oh God. And just, oh my gosh. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Right? Oh my God. And they're like, wow, in one match, he lost all of his swagger. But then we have, I like that Nikaido and him stay afterwards to do like their little post-game analysis. And Nikaido was like, well, Kiriyama hasn't replied to my text yet. And it was because, at first I was worried. At first I thought something bad had happened to Kiriyama, and I'm like, oh God, what's happening? But then we find out that he was with the teacher working on after-school stuff. And that's when Shimada's like, why do you care so much about him? And like the look on his face, like when he has the frown on his face is so interesting. Like that face where he's like trying to figure out whether she should ask Kiriyama or not about it. He's like, why do you want him to get better? And he's like, he broke my head in half and pulled me from the mud. I'm not going to lie. I was so hyped up from all the Kyouko and Gotou bullshit that I wasn't expecting this like giant gut punch of emotion to come at the end of this episode. And it just suddenly hit me. And I was like starting to like get misty eyed. And I was like, Sho, why are you doing this now? I was like, what are you doing? I don't want to cry. But the idea, because you have Nikaido here, right? And Nikaido talks about how he had become this lump of ego that thought he was untouchable. And the worst part, he said, was that it made him to the point where he was egotistical. And he was just thinking he was better than people. And he wasn't being a good sportsman. And eventually was going to lead to him suffering a huge loss. But Ray kind of caused him to rethink and realize that he was not alone. That there are people that are better out there. I realize now why I like Nikaido so much. He is Kagami from Kuroko's Basketball. Kagami is my favorite character in Kuroko's Basketball. And his personality and Nikaido's are totally different. Their appearances are totally different. But the one thing about them that I always loved about Kagami in that series, and it's not really a spoiler because you'll find out within like 2 episodes of the series, is that he loves being challenged. It's like Miyuki in Ace the Diamond. He loves being challenged. He doesn't want to go up against weak people. He wants to be challenged. He wants to get better. He wants to find people that are as good as him, that challenge him and make him feel like he has a rival and that he can keep using as inspiration to become a better person. And that's how Nikaido is. He views Rei as that rival. He's like, I'm not alone. I have you. You are the Yu-Gi-Oh to my Seto Kaiba is essentially what it is. He's like, you're my rival. You'll make me better. And you make me want to keep playing the game because you're always that one person I've got to beat that I want to strive to top every time. But it's so interesting because Nikaido views the head breaking in half as such a positive thing. He's like, you snapped me out of my daydream. You broke through. You cut my head in half. You pulled me from the mud. You made me see the light. The balloon's up in the air. He's like, you brought color into my world. He views that loss as a reality check, but in a good way. That it's something positive, like glass half full. And then you have Ray over here, who has been building up his ego, who started out as like feeling like, yeah, I like this sport and I'm kind of good at it, but I don't really know why I'm playing and I don't have a purpose. And then as he started getting better and winning these matches and gaining his independence and living on his own, it seemed like it was building it up. But then that loss, rather than it make him realize he's not alone, that loss just made him feel like he was weak and not worthy. And so it was like a reality check that he wasn't ready. But I don't think I would describe that as positive. So what I wish would happen would be that Nikaido and Ray would sit down and talk about it. I wish Nikaido and Ray would have that moment. They'd be able to go to that workshop and Nikaido would be able to tell Ray this. And Ray would be like, oh, that's not how I thought about this at all. And I don't think that that will ever happen. I don't think that they'll ever have that confrontation with one another and say that to one another. But I wish that they'd at least be able to meet and play and realize that they're playing against each other all the time to be rivals to make each other better. I don't know. You could maybe compare it to Kota and Ray's biological dad. You can compare that to Shimada and Gotou. Even though, professionally Gotou isn't sleazy. Professionally Gotou is very respected in the community. And Shimada kind of sees him as his rival. It kind of reinforces their purpose in playing the game. And I felt so bad when he was like sitting, and I was like, again, I wish that Ray knew, because Nikaido talks about sitting alone at the hospital and seeing people playing sports out of the corner of his eye, but he couldn't because he wasn't physically capable. And that got me so emotional because it made me think about Ray when he was, playing shogi and he wasn't athletic and that was the only thing he could do. And I'm like, Ray, you and Nikaido have so much in common and I wish you both could see it. And it just makes me so emotional. Because Nikaido, he's like, I just wanted to feel like I had somebody that I could play against. And on that hot day, when everybody else left and I was just this lump of ego, you came. You were literally the refreshing glass of water, metaphorically and figuratively and literally, that saved me. That he quenched his thirst. I met Kiriyama, and he saved me. And the two balloons. Again, Kiriyama and Nikaido, healthy relationship, healthy ship. Akari and Ray, healthy ship. Hina and Ray, healthy ship. There are healthy ships everywhere for Ray. And the one that they're almost pushing is like the toxic one. And I'm like, please stop. But in that moment, he's like, there is someone who worked harder than me. And the fact that Nikaido is like, there are people that work harder than me. So that just means I have to work harder. And I wonder if when Shimada says, yeah, I understand that kind of, he's not necessarily talking about him and Gotou, but he could also be talking about him and Soya. That Soya is the one that's better than him, that he's trying to strive to meet back up with. But anyway, then they see Gotou getting into the car and he's pissed and he leaves Kyouko behind and she runs up after him. And she's like, I'm done with you. And Shimada's like, oh. And poor Nikaido doesn't understand the situation. And Shimada's like, why do I have this sense of defeat? He's like, no, that was nothing. I'm going to win the next one too. And he's like, come on, kiddo. That's the brother I know. We're going to think up a strategy. Shimada comes across as being so like quiet and he's this little like stick figure man and he's like so like lanky and he just comes across as being kind of like, okay. But then when he's with Nikaido, that like spirit where he's like, let's go, let's find a strategy, let's do it, let's win. Like you just see, like I could see why they're brothers, because Nikaido and Shimada both have that like fighting spirit. Meanwhile, poor Ray is stuck doing all of these reports in the dark. And the teacher's like, it's my fault. Anyway, we get the end card. And the end card, which I'm going to take a picture of right now and show you all. up here where you guys can all see it, is of the grandpa with, we didn't get to see Momo this episode. He was making the candies. I want to see who the end card is by. The end card for episode 15 of March is by, get who the end card is by. It is, I'm gonna find out who the end card is by. Tell me your secrets. End card. I wish they would tell me. Give me just a second and I'll find out. I really like it. I like the like realistic style of the grandpa. They still make Momo look very anime. But I don't know who they have the end card by there. Grumble, 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 grumble. Anyway, I'm sure somebody in the comments will comment who this end card is by, and I'll be able to talk with you all about it next episode. Or by episode 17, because I don't know if I'll watch 16 before I get to the comments. So we have one match left, one title match left to go. Who's going to win? I think that Gotou's going to win. I think Gotou's going to win, and I think Shimada is going to take that defeat, and Ray is going to become curious and join the workshop so that he can question Shimada about the defeat and what he thinks about it. But that's just my thoughts. We'll see. And I apologize. I got really riled up about Kyouko, but I can't take her anymore. I'm just like, I can't. I'm like, girl, now, come on now. I just cannot with her at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. I know she's still family and he feels guilty for her, but I'm still just like, I really want her to fix herself and it not be Ray's responsibility. That's just my thoughts. That's just how I feel about it. And I don't know what else there is to say. So in any case, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I'm sorry if you find Kyouko fascinating. And here's the thing too. I've said this with other series. You all will have to be patient with me because I've not seen the whole series. There may be some amazing character development with her character later on. There may be some great character development with her that makes me change my mind and I really appreciate her, but it is not this episode. And you all just have to be patient and we'll see where that goes. So anyway, she's just one character that just grinds my gears. And yep. So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more March Comes In Like a Lion.